Samir, how long have you been at TriggerMesh?
I think around 9 months now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So maybe before Samir goes with the demo on OpenShift, I think I'll do a quick demo myself.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna just get it started, have some dialogue with you, about the company and what's in the name, and talk about the exciting year that you've had, and then I'll basically hand it over to you.
Yeah. Good.
And your offering that's in the Red Hat marketplace, that's a commercial offering, right? That's people can actually purchase it from the marketplace. It's not a trial.
So you know what? This was a requirement by IBM. Get in the marketplace that they wanted us to put a price.
Okay.
So the product, the AWS event sources that we're going to talk about today, they're open source, but originally we had created a certified operator, which was also open source and it was free. And then when we started talking to the folks, suddenly the marketplace moved from Red Hat control to IBM control.
Yeah.
And now it's the Red Hat marketplace operated by IBM. It's been a rabbit hole, I cannot tell you.
Yeah.
And they asked us to put a price.
Yeah. Cyrus, can you start the recording, please?
Recording has started.
All right, I'm going to hit the intro bumper.
Okay, we're live once again. My name is Michael Waite, and we are here with another edition of the OpenShift Commons Briefings Operator Hours. Today, we are lucky enough to have with us our friends from TriggerMesh, and we have Sebastian Goazgan, the co-founder and chief product officer of TriggerMesh, and then joining us from India today, we have Samir Naik, the senior software engineer, who's going to be showing us some of the capabilities in a demonstration of the TriggerMesh software. Sebastian, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you very much. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for joining us. We're happy to have you here. I know from Red Hat's perspective, we've been working, we work with software vendors to help them test and certify their software as a Red Hat operator, as a Red Hat operator for OpenShift, so that, customers, when they, are using our container orchestration platform, know that they're going to have the best day two supportability, for production environments. So TriggerMesh has we've been working with you folks for quite a while. You have a Red Hat certified operator. It's available in our registry. It's available in our marketplace, the Red Hat marketplace. But tell me a little bit about TriggerMesh. You're one of the founders of the company. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. What's in the name TriggerMesh and so forth.
Yeah, sure. Is that Samir? Is that your kid or around?
No, it's just my chair making noise.
It's your chair making noise. All right.
I was wondering if it's one of his interns, one of the new summer interns has already shown up.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. TriggerMesh. So we got started when Google announced Knative. Knative project. So that was July 2018. They announced Knative. I had created Kubeless, one of the first FaaS, function as a service solution on top of Kubernetes. And when Google went ahead and announced Knative, so Red Hat was on board, and then IBM, was on board, even though they, of course, you and IBM were working on OpenWhisk, but then everybody aligned on Knative.
Sure.
Ultimately, Pivotal, VMware also joined, right? So, it looked like everybody was going, all the vendors at least were going to join forces and work on Knative. So, I decided to launch a new startup, TriggerMesh, to work in the serverless, serverless ecosystem on top of Knative. And our vision was not just function, but it was, especially event orchestration, because we think that eventing is the big, the big component of serverless as you're trying to build event-driven applications. So we created TriggerMesh very quickly in July 2018 with my co-founder, Mark Hinkle. We helped GitLab develop GitLab Serverless. So GitLab Serverless was some work we did for them very early on. And since then, we kept on developing, product around Knative, and understanding the use cases, talking to lots of folks, doing a lot of market discovery. And then finally, at some point, we thought we were ready. So last December 2019, we raised a seed round, 3 million seed round from Index and Crane. And early 2020, we were super excited. We decided to start building the team. That's when, ultimately Samir joined. We're fully remote, fully distributed team. So, we got started, first engineering hire, March 1st. And then end of March, COVID, right? Or it started before, right? But
Sure.
so it's been an interesting year, but thankfully we all know how to work in a distributed manner and remotely, so it's been fine.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're fully distributed and remote. We at Red Hat had a large component of the company remote, but certainly lots and lots of us were working in offices, and it's been pretty interesting for the last 9 or 10 months. Everyone, I think we have 380,000 employees now in the company, in the combined company, and everybody's working from home. And I thought it was going to make less work. I thought it was going to be a little less busy, and it turns out it's things are busier than ever, which I suppose is a good problem to have. But you folks have been really, really busy. You've had a pretty exciting year. In this year, you guys got named by CRN one of the top 10 coolest startups of 2020. What makes you guys so cool?
Yeah, yeah. So, it's been an exciting year, because we were building the company. I mean, whatever the the world environment, right, with the pandemic, it was exciting nonetheless to build the company. So first, you put a team together, right? So, guys like Samir in India, we have, Antoine in Germany and Spain, and, the US, and I'm in Switzerland. So, putting all those folks together, building a team so that we can start building a product, that's been very, very exciting. And then, really as startup people trying to find the real product market fit, it's actually quite fun, because you have a vision, which is, developers are going to adopt and build event-driven applications using serverless functions and then cloud services increasingly. So that's our vision. But then you need to find the sweet spot. So it's been really, really good. And then, coolest startup, it's because we're working with cutting edge technology. So on top of Kubernetes, on top of OpenShift, we push Knative. We're number 6 contributor in Knative, behind all the big dogs, right? VMware, Google. Right.
Sure.
So we're a small startup, but we still manage to to get news out there, to get contribution in the ecosystem. So here, on the OpenShift marketplace, we put some AWS event sources, right? So you're trying to build an event-driven application using events from AWS, but then you want to trigger workload on your OpenShift cluster. You have an open source project from us, and then it's also available in the marketplace. So we do lots of things, and we make sure that people know about them, and then we, being small, we also that allows us to go quite fast.
Now you used the word trigger there for triggering. Is that TriggerMesh? Is that sort of what's in the name?
Yeah, totally. So the vision was definitely building serverless application that we saw as a mesh of serverless functions, cloud services on AWS, on Google Cloud, on Azure Cloud, and then on-premises workload running in Kubernetes or OpenShift, right? So we saw this hybrid, world, right? So this composition, this mesh of workload and services, that's what we saw, and then we're like, to be able to start the execution of those workloads, you're going to need events to flow through the system, and certain state changes are going to trigger those workloads. So that's how we came up with TriggerMesh, which I think is great, but for some people it's also a little bit confusing because they think we are a service mesh company. We're not a service mesh company.
Sure. Now you use the word serverless, and serverless seems to be one of the buzzwords of the year. Is it really serverless though, or doesn't that really mean somebody else's servers?
Yeah, so there's a meme actually on Google. It's exactly what you just said. Serverless is just somebody else's servers. I just gave a talk at KubeCon. It's called Serverless or Serviceful. Serverless, I think, is a little bit of an unfortunate word because everybody says, oh, there are no servers. Well, of course there are servers, right? You have a process running, it needs to run somewhere. So yes, it's basically managed services. And then really, the philosophy behind it is really you have more and more services in your apps, in your enterprise. You have AWS, you have ServiceNow, Salesforce, Elasticsearch, Twilio, on-premises, services. So it's just full of services, and you're trying to make sense of this. You're trying to compose them. You're trying to trigger them, when something happens, right? So serviceful would be much better, I think. Anyway.
Service full.
Full, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That came from Patrick Debois. So John Willis works with you now. One of the leaders of the DevOps movement. So Patrick Debois was a good friend of John, and I think Patrick came up with Serviceful 2017, so 3 years ago. I remember he gave a talk in Belgium at Config Management Camp, and he said, "Hey, you know what? I'm not going serverless. I'm actually full of services. I'm going serviceful."
Seems to make sense.
Yeah.
So you got any war stories for us? Meaning, like, you're one of the top 10 coolest startups of 2020. What are the big challenges that you see your customers are trying to solve? Moving from the data center into a public cloud and to a multi-cloud environment is great. OpenShift allows people to build once and deploy anywhere, but it's not all perfect, right? I mean, there's this new flexibility brings all kinds of new challenges for customers trying to run those production workloads in the multi-cloud environment. How are you folks helping address those issues for customers?
Yeah, so we got the seed in December. We started hiring in March, so we're 9 months in, right? So I don't have a huge treasure of war stories, right? you know, but the POCs that we're doing with, you know, pretty, especially a lot of banks, you know, come to us inbound, and they have, you know, they have issues. Mostly what came up is that they have integration issues. So when I say composing services, it translates into integration issues. And then, so example, you know, we work with a bank, you know, they started doing lots of stuff with Salesforce. So all of their customers are in Salesforce. Every time they do a change, it's in Salesforce. It's their database, and they need their backend infrastructure to basically keep in sync with what's in Salesforce. So, you know, big challenge, you know, linking the two integration, right? So it's not, you know, that's the type of integration that we're seeing, and we're seeing, you know, more and more. So, you know, Azure Healthcare API that somebody wants to use, but then they have lots of things on AWS, right? So they need to link Azure Healthcare to SNS or, you know, EventBridge, you know, things like this. Overall, you know, the big challenge that all the startups have, you know, I feel is that we're all very cutting edge, and there are multiple speeds, right? The speed of a startup that's, you know, cutting edge with products like Knative or Argo events or so on, and then the pace of an enterprise, you know, it's totally different in the, you know, innovation curve, right? So, you know, you still see a lot of companies that are trying to put CI/CD in place. For example, you know, we need CI/CD. We need to speed up deployment to OpenShift. So it's one of our big POCs. You know, it's been one of their biggest driver. How do we speed up deployment to OpenShift from 30 days to 1 hour, right? So they put lots of things in place, but then, you know, there are big questions like security, you know, security evaluation, risk assessment, things like this. So how do they make that happen, which is a, you know, basic problem. So it's all, you know, it all comes back down to automation. How can I put more automation in my, you know, in my infrastructure, in my pipelines, right? So that's where events come into play. And that's where, like, hey, I need events from SonarQube. I need events from Jenkins. I need events from Bitbucket, you know, GitLab. You know, I need events from all over the place. I need a way to be able to codify, you know, what happens to those events and what they should trigger. And once I have done that, once I've automated all those flows, you know, I'm going to be able to speed up my deployment to OpenShift, right?
Is that realistic, going from 30 days to 1 hour?
Yeah, I was off the phone like a couple hours ago with a big bank that just did this.
Really?
37 days to 1 hour to OpenShift. Yep. Absolutely.
Wow.
I
thought you were just making a random statement.
Oh,
That's
no,
pretty impressive.
absolutely not random. Yeah. And, you know, I'm going to give you this answer. I'm under NDA, but that one is actually true. You know, no, that's for real. That's for real. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and a lot of people are trying to do this. So the big challenge for us as a startup is that, you know, you start talking to folks and you're like, oh, you want to go serverless, you want to do event driven, blah blah blah. But what's the business driver? What's the, you know, what is going to make them take the decision? And you know, you go back to very simple things. You know, how can I speed up my time to market, my time to value, right? Which, you know, that one example is very telling, because, you know, it's absolutely true, and it's, you know, speeding up the time it takes to, you know, to go live. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We were talking when we were on the bridge just before we went live, and you were mentioning that there was something that you wanted to show here before we get on to Samir. I know Samir has a demo that he's going to be sharing with everyone, but I think you said that there was something that you wanted to show before we get to Samir.
Yeah, can we do this? So Samir has a cool demo on OpenShift, but I can show you some basic things here. So blue jeans. Can I share screen?
Yeah, you go to at the top there, you've got mute video. There you go. And just make sure you do share full screen.
What am I sharing? Am I sharing my entire screen or
Yeah.
just Google?
Yeah, if you share your entire screen, it'd be better for the video and for the audience because it'll be larger. Not everybody's 22 years old, and some people like a little bit bigger font.
All right. So am I sharing the full screen here?
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I logged into to our TriggerMesh. We have a SaaS, so you can deploy on any Kubernetes cluster, but we have a SaaS offering. So here I'm logged in. We have anyway lots of little nice things in the UI. This is what we call our bridge catalog. So they represent integrations, basic integration between services, right? You're trying to go service full. So you got things like Salesforce to Elasticsearch, Slack to Confluent, Slack to Google Sheet, right? So all of these, they're in our catalog, and you say use template, and then you can fill up the parameters to basically configure those event sources and the event. We call them target. Some people call them event sinks, right? So event sources to event sync. So when you do this, you end up building, the key to TriggerMesh, which is bridges. You build a bridge between two services. What's interesting, because we rely on Kubernetes, is that those bridges, they have a declarative API, right? So we have a bunch of CRDs. We extend the Kubernetes API, and then with that powerful UI, you can create those manifests that represents those bridges, right? And if we try to do a quick bridge here, I want to do a SQS to just a web app that shows the events. So here I see the sources that are available. So I'm going to create an AWS event source, right? Red Hat demo. We're gonna go through a broker, a message broker, and here I need the ARN of my queue. So I have my AWS console. I'm going to zoom in. I copy the ARN. I put it here. So that's all I need to configure an AWS event source. And Samir can do the same thing on OpenShift. And then I need to send that event somewhere. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so it's for any cloud though, right? Not just AWS. Could work on any of them. This is just that one example.
Yeah, so that example is just an AWS event source, right? We have a few sources for Azure and Google. And here as a target, I put a basic web app. So when I've done this, I've created my bridge and I submit, right? So now we have a controller, that's running in your Kubernetes cluster. It's going to see the objects and it's going to create them. And of course, I messed up the name. You see that I have a full manifest for that bridge, right? So that bridge is running now. It's green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the web app that is the target for the event. So it's that Sokai 4. This is actually a serverless, call that a function, but serverless application. And so when I put events in SQS, I'm going to consume them, and then they get routed to this app, right? So I go in SQS, and here I say, hey, Mike. Hi, Mike. I put the message in SQS, and then, boom, I get it right away, right? So, we have Chris in the background, right? Hi, Chris. Said send message, right? And then we get, hi, Chris. So that it looks simple, but what you have here is that you have a scalable SQS consumer that's been automatically deployed in your Kubernetes cluster. It can scale its Kubernetes deployment. Every time there is a message that's being put in SQS, we get that. The source emits a cloud event. We follow the CNCF specification. It emits a cloud event over HTTP. It gets to a broker, and then from that broker, it gets sent to the target, which is this one, this web app, and that basic web app just shows you the JSON, so you see the body, right?
And why the sockeye salmon? Why'd you choose that?
You have to ask his name Scott, who is now at who is now at VMware. It's because it's based on WebSocket. So why the fish? I'm not sure why. You know, Samir?
I think there is a fish named sockeye. There's a sockeye fish, I think.
Okay.
Not sure.
Yeah.
And
then
when
here,
you say,
go ahead,
Sebastian, when you say any Kubernetes, does that mean any community edition of Kubernetes as well, or just the mainstream commercial ones, or
any really? So.
Okay.
Because we're just TriggerMesh gets deployed. The entire TriggerMesh platform is really a set of CRDs and a set of controllers. The AWS event sources specifically, which are in the IBM marketplace, this is just one controller, right? Operator.
And I was going to ask you about your operator. I know I think you got your operator built at the end in summertime of 2019 with us or something. How does the operator help people who are using TriggerMesh in either in a test and dev or in a production environment?
Hold on, I'm trying to figure out how to turn off the screen share. Oh, here you go. So the AWS event sources, they're open source, right? We have bits of TriggerMesh that are closed source, but the AWS event sources, they're open source. And it's really just a controller, right? So now the question becomes, you have a controller, how do you deploy in OpenShift? You need to have an operator. That's where the story gets a little bit funny, and at some point we should discuss this, right? Because so we need to create an operator to install our controller, right?
Right.
And the first one, how did we do this quickly? Well, we base it on a Helm chart.
I was going to say, probably a Helm chart's the easiest and fastest way to go, right?
So we had an operator to install an Helm chart to install a controller. It doesn't feel very optimal, but if we didn't have all of this to get through basically the operator hub, it's just really a kube control apply, and you apply the CRD and you deploy the controller, and that's it.
Okay. Well, and so TriggerMesh is as a service, right? So correct me if I'm wrong, but the only thing that needs to be deployed on the customer's nodes is the agent or the the thing that phones home, if you will. Is that right?
No. So we have what I showed you is the SaaS, right? So if you want to use it, you go to the SaaS. There is no connection to on-prem, right? If you want to, what I just showed you, if you want that on premises, then you have to talk to us, and then we install all the bits in your Kubernetes cluster, OpenShift or something else.
I would imagine for some of the in the financial services industry, that's probably the method of choice. I would be willing to bet.
Yes, on premises. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so
Samir,
in the marketplace, it's just the AWS event sources.
Okay. Cool.
Which you can use without the rest of TriggerMesh, right?
How does that work?
Well, you end up with just a controller, right? So you So you can configure the AWS event sources, and then the targets, it's going to be OpenShift serverless. Right? So that's, we only provide you the sources, they're certified, we support them, but then the targets, you fall back on OpenShift workload, OpenShift serverless, functions, right?
Okay. Good. Smear, I think you're on deck.
Yeah.
And welcome from India. I thanks for staying up late, I think. Or staying up late or getting up early, one of the two, right?
We could put pins on the world map in your back.
Yeah. So hi, my name is Samir. I am from Goa, like Mike mentioned. So what I wanted to do is to extend on Sebastian's demo. I want to demonstrate the same thing on the OpenShift platform using our operator that was mentioned by Sebastian. So like Seb mentioned that TriggerMesh Cloud is our SaaS offering, but we do package these bits and pieces of our cloud platform and make it available. So one of these is the AWS Event Sources package. So using that package, you could do the same sort of integration by hand on OpenShift. So what I want to demonstrate is an application use case where, say, for example, you have an application use case where you have a Kinesis data stream, and what your use case is that you want to pick out messages from the Kinesis data stream, modify them as your application logic, and then send them to a Kafka queue. This is just an imaginary use case. So typically, if you're an application developer, what you would go ahead and do is write a whole application for this scenario, do the integration with Kinesis, and then do the integration with Kafka, and then write your application logic, right? So that is where serverless comes into picture, where you don't have to bother about the integration with Kinesis and Kafka. You just work on your application logic and just use the existing components. That is the whole idea of serverless, right? Not there are no servers, there are servers, but you just focus on your application and don't bother about writing the Nginx part and all this.
Samir, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Yeah.
We're having some questions come in the Blue Jeans chat, and I wanted to make sure that we're getting the question addressed and then answered, because we're also going out on YouTube Live and Facebook Live. So Sebastian, I don't know if you want to address that question so that the people on YouTube and Facebook can hear the question and the answer as well.
Oh, yeah, sure. So, yeah, I was replying to the question. So there was one, sorry, Samir, there was one question. Are sources and sinks implemented as Kafka connectors? Not really, because you don't necessarily use Kafka as the messaging substrate. So sources and sinks, they just deal with cloud events that are being sent over HTTP. And then it's the broker under the hood that could be a Kafka topic. But it could be something else than Kafka. It could be Kinesis or Azure Event Hub or Google PubSub. And Samir, why don't you jump on the show us the OpenShift the operator, where we see the how you did the config of the AWS event sources. We can keep it a little bit more interactive. Just
and if Chris Short picks up some more questions from YouTube and Facebook, Samir, are you okay with us, or do you want to hold the questions till the end of the demo?
No, I'm okay pausing and for the questions to be.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll try and barge in politely if they come in.
Yeah, and in the demo there are going to be some points where there could be some pauses. So at that point, it could be a good
okay, great
segment to have the questions. So like I was saying, there's an imaginary use case where you want to consume AWS events occurring on the AWS Kinesis stream. So some messages are coming to your Kinesis stream. Say you want to process them as an application logic and then send the processed message to a Kafka queue. So the use case can be anything, but this is just an example to give you an idea of what you can do with our sources component, right? So this is an overall view. You can see my screen, right?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
Yep.
This is an overview of how what our application, what we want to achieve in our application.
I think you could click on that hide button to make that thing go away. Yeah.
So with that application in mind, I will just quickly go over the setup that we want to do for getting our application running. So here is my OpenShift console. This is just some housekeeping work just to make sure that we have everything that we need, right? So we're just going to have to install a couple of operators to provide the infrastructure for this application. First thing is we need the OpenShift serverless platform. I just type serverless and I install the Red Hat OpenShift serverless. Just accept the defaults, nothing wrong with that.
So that's where, Mike, when I said that, our operator in the marketplace is just the AWS sources, and then you can target OpenShift serverless. So here, he's installing the OpenShift serverless operator, which is Knative serving under the hood, right?
Got it.
So you're gonna end up with Knative serving in your OpenShift cluster, which is a set of TRDs, and it gives you scale to zero capability and auto scaling.
So I just completed installing the serverless operator, and this I also instantiated the Knative serving and the Knative eventing APIs. So this is standard installation process. If you visit the README of that operator, that is how it has to be installed. Second thing,
Knative eventing on OpenShift, which is a GA now, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Second thing is now that we have the serverless components available, we can go ahead and install the AWS sources operator by TriggerMesh. So we have two versions available. The project is actually open source, but the one from the marketplace, you get 90 days of trial before you can ask for support, I think. So you just go and install the one from the catalog. Again, just set the defaults. And this is the operator that Seb was talking about, which is a operator, which is a Helm chart that installs a controller. And the same thing, we need to instantiate the API provided by the operator. So let's just go and instantiate in the default namespace. So this provides the infrastructure for our application to run. So one of the things that I had spoken about was we are going to post the message to a Kafka queue. So since we are using the OpenShift platform, we can also deploy a Kafka queue on OpenShift. So let's take advantage of that as well. So to do that, there is a string Z operator available on the operator hub. So we can just go and install that one in the defaults.
So maybe Samir, while you do this, I can, because that can be confusing. So TriggerMesh itself is not a streaming platform. So we are a messaging platform. So we need a messaging platform. Okay. Knative eventing, same thing. Knative eventing doesn't do messaging. It's a set of API construct that allow you to build some eventing flow, right? So TriggerMesh uses Knative eventing. We have additional bits like the AWS event sources for which we provide support, right? But under the hood, if you need messaging, you need something like Kafka, right? Or NATS, or RabbitMQ maybe, or Kinesis, right? So here, when you're on premises, it makes total sense to use Kafka. That's why, Samir is installing a little Kafka cluster through the StreamZ operator.
Yeah. So now that I have installed the StreamZ operator, I can go and instantiate the Kafka cluster, which is pretty cool. This is all you need to do to create a Kafka cluster, right? This part takes a little bit of time. So if there are any questions, maybe you can answer them.
Can you show us the GitHub repo of the AWS sources?
Yeah. So the AWS sources are open source. It is at TriggerMesh AWS event sources. You can find
and they are
the
GA.
source code. Yes, the source code here, and then if there's a config folder which has got samples, you can use these samples to actually start using the source and play around with.
So show us a manifest of the Kinesis source, for example.
Yeah, so Kinesis source will have AWS Kinesis source. So this is what a manifest of the Kinesis source look like. Very minimal. We just specify the ARN of the Kinesis stream, and then the credentials to access the AWS service, and then the sink where the event. So when an event is picked up from the Kinesis data stream, it is sent to a sink element, and in this case, in the default broker sample, the default sample, it is sent to the default broker on Knative.
So that one is interesting. So you see that the TriggerMesh event sources are a set of CRDs that allow you to deploy event consumers for specific AWS services. So here it's Kinesis. So you deploy this on your OpenShift cluster, suddenly you're consuming events from Kinesis. Where do they go? They go to the sink reference. So you see in the spec there is a sink. So if you go back, there is a sink, right? And here that sink, you see that it's a Knative broker, but it can be something else, right? Including an OpenShift serverless function. So now you have a flow. You're consuming messages from Kinesis, and they can go to your OpenShift serverless. Sorry, Samir, go ahead.
Yeah.
Cool. The Kafka cluster is ready.
Seems to be ready. Just hold on a minute. 1 second.
So basically what you're going to show here, which is quite powerful, is that you're going to show basically almost a sync between, my French accent is saying sync, but S-Y-N-C, right? So you're going to sync Kinesis and Kafka.
Yeah. So just to complete my Kafka, so this Kafka cluster is accessible only within the OpenShift platform. So the way I'm going to post my messages to the Kafka cluster is through the HTTP API. So what I want to do is I want to expose a REST bridge that is made available by the Kafka bridge component. So I will instantiate the Kafka bridge. It creates a REST proxy for my Kafka API, and then I will expose the bridge outside the cluster by setting up a route. So again, going to use the defaults. Bridge.
Hold on. You said bridge -1. Is that normal?
To be one.
Good catch. I was going to say the same thing.
Let's just go back.
So none of this is really TriggerMesh specific. Here we're doing it like really step by step from scratch, creating a Kafka cluster with Streamzy, creating the HTTP proxy so that we can inject into Kafka. But on the other side, we have the TriggerMesh sources that are ready, and we're gonna set up this Kinesis source shortly.
Yeah. Yeah. So so as the bridge is coming up, let's go and set up the route. So the idea of the route is to be able to access our REST proxy, right? So I'll name it the same way, my bridge.
This is cool because I'd never seen the full demo, so I'm getting an OpenShift crash course here.
So yeah, so this exposes the REST API proxy on this URL. So the REST request sent to this URL will go to the Kafka cluster, right? So we have we have all the things. So let's just create a Kafka topic. Kafka topic.
I didn't know you could do all of this through the OpenShift console.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
App queue.
So
yeah,
we have
so
a
now,
Kafka cluster. We have an HTTP endpoint to get into that Kafka cluster. We have a topic.
yeah, we have a topic, and we are pretty much ready. On the other end, I have set up a data stream on Amazon Kinesis. Okay. Oh, I got logged out. 1 second.
Yeah, there is a question about Debezium. So you could use things like Debezium if you're Kafka specific. The thing the thing that's interesting here is that this particular demo, we are really talking about the Kafka with Streamzy. But if you're just using Knative eventing, all the Kafka bits are abstracted, right? And it could be something else under the hood. So if you're not using Kafka, you could still use the TriggerMesh sources and use the eventing abstraction from Knative.
Yeah.
Go
So yeah, so I already have set up an Kinesis data stream called my app stream here. This is the ARN which we'll need while setting up our Kinesis source Knative. So let's just go and start with the demo. So now that we have all the components, I'll just go over the application, how the application will look. A little bit of Knative knowledge is helpful here, but try to follow along. It's not that difficult, right? So what we have is the my app stream, which is a data source on AWS Kinesis. The idea is to get it from here to the Kafka queue. So to achieve this flow, we are going to use 3 components. One is the AWS Kinesis source, which is the one which we just installed. And then we are going, like I had said, that in the use case, you want to modify the message in whatever way possible. So there's going to be an application logic component that we are going to use. For that, we are going to use another TriggerMesh component called infra target, which is basically a component that allows us to write JavaScript within the declarative syntax of creating a manifest, right? So you can write JavaScript and just write in there, you can modify the message however you want. Or you could implement your own serverless function and deal with it, right? From there, we will be using another component called HTTP sync, which is of kind HTTP target. It is similar to the HTTP source in Knative. The difference is that HTTP target makes a post. So you can use it to post post messages over an HTTP endpoint. So which will basically, so this component will make a post to the Kafka REST proxy, and which basically the message will then end up in the Kafka queue if everything goes fine.
So Samir, just go ahead and show us the source configure, because we're gonna be running a bit out of time.
Yeah. So actually, I was supposed to do the whole demos. I'll just use manifest that I already have.
So go for it. Set everything up, and then Mike and I, Mike, if you have questions, you and I, we can talk while Samir gets everything set up, and then we can keep watching what he's doing.
Yeah.
Ouch. Yeah. So the person who asked the question about glue. Are we creating event-based infrastructure glue to connect all services in the cloud?
Yep. Yeah. You could say it like this. So here, we're really getting down and dirty because Samir had, created a Kafka cluster, and now we're talking about transforming the events that are flowing through the system, because the Kafka proxy needs events in a certain shape. So what comes out of the Kinesis source needs to be transformed before we can send it to the Kafka proxy and before it gets accepted. So here, we're touching on really all the components to build an event-driven application in OpenShift, using TriggerMesh sources, using OpenShift serverless, using the Kafka Streamz operator. It's the whole shebang, right? The strength of it, and going back to what we were talking earlier with some of the proof of value that we're doing with financial institution. What they really like is that at the end of the day, your event-driven application is fully declared with an API, right? So your event sources are use a declarative API. Your syncs use a declarative API. The triggers, the transformation. That's really what you get with TriggerMesh. And once you have this representation, it's just like your Kubernetes manifest. Stick them in version control, source of truth, and then use your CI/CD system to manage them. Use your GitOps, right? We've just got 46 million to do GitOps. So adopt your GitOps mindset, and you can manage your event-driven applications the same way.
And AS had a question about, do you have some security context for the messaging mesh events in JSON?
I'm not exactly sure what that question means, but in Knative, you can if you use Istio or another service mesh, you can turn on the mesh. A lot of people don't use the mesh; they just use the ingress capability. But if you want, you can turn on the service mesh, which gives you mutual TLS between services. So you have added security. So if you're talking about messaging mesh, that would be the answer.
Yeah.
Apparently you nailed it.
Yeah. So I think I have set up all the components. So basically, the components that are deployed are support this architecture. So these are the 3 components, and then there are 2 channels in between. So if there are channels and there are the components, right? And then there are subscriptions. So if you look at the whole manifest, there is actually really nothing going on. The only thing of interest should be this. This is the component where we can just write JavaScript code within our manifest and manipulate the event. So whatever JavaScript is supported by Infra.js, you could stick it in here and transform the messages. So for example,
that's a little secret sauce in TriggerMesh where we have we have this manifest where you can inject a bit of JSON to do a bit of magic. We also have an event transformation which is fully declarative called Bumblebee. But okay, skip that one, Samir. People are gonna get scared.
Sure. So we have all the components. So the idea was to pick messages from the Kinesis stream, and they should end up in the Kafka cluster. So let me just fire up a Kafka consumer. So let's fire up a Kafka consumer so that we know that when the messages start showing up in the queue, we can validate that it is actually happening. So let me just start the consumer.
So we're consuming Kafka. How are you producing to Kafka? To
Yeah,
Kinesis.
Yeah, so what I have done is I have set up a EC2 instance, which will post application logs, Nginx application logs to my Kinesis data stream. It's just I found this nice tool called the Nginx log generator, which generates random Nginx logs, not real. What I'm doing is that the logs are written out to temp.app.log, and the AWS Kinesis agent is set up to send that application log to my app stream, my Kinesis stream. Simple as that. So let's just start generating the logs. So, so if everything works as expected, these logs should get put into the Kinesis data stream, and then from there, our source will pick the data from the Kinesis data stream and then do all the magic and send it to the Kafka, which we should see in this top half of the terminal. So let us just wait. It could take a little bit of time, but let's just wait for that to happen.
And by the way, Sebastian, I've been negotiating with the production team, and I've negotiated an additional 10 minutes for us if we want it.
I think we're almost there. We're almost there. But yeah, so it looks like a lot, right? But it shouldn't be underestimated, right? Samir did a bunch of stuff here. He set up a Kafka cluster in OpenShift with Streamz, deployed the Kafka HTTP proxy, created a topic. He installed OpenShift serverless OpenShift eventing, right, which are Knative components under the hood. He deployed the TriggerMesh, the TriggerMesh operator, right? AWS sources operator. So now we can actually sync up Kinesis and Kafka, right? So now he's emitting, messages to Kinesis, and then now, if the entire flow, goes well, we should see them in Kafka with this little kube control command. It takes a little bit of time here.
Yeah, it's anytime now.
What? What did you say? What did you say?
Anytime now. I'm monitoring.
Anytime now.
Yeah, should happen.
That's why we need the 10 minutes extra.
Well, it's actually good to see this is actually live though, as opposed to like just a scripted demo. Of course, what could go wrong, right?
Go wrong.
Nothing.
Something is going wrong.
Drum roll. That's the problem if you don't record a demo, or if you don't have a batch script that you execute. That's why you scared me with that -1. I was like,
consumer, right? Actually, I can see the messages are being posted. I'm having a monitoring terminal here. I can see that the messages are going to the being sent through the pipeline, but there is some mistake somewhere.
oh, you're seeing them. So show us the logs of the Kinesis source.
Yeah, this is the logs of the Kinesis source.
That's running in OpenShift, right?
Yeah.
So the Kinesis source from TriggerMesh is getting the messages from Kinesis.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't look like the Kafka consumer is getting them. So
I'm wondering whether I set up the apply. I think I might have not run the subscriptions.
that might explain it. So if there's, you go. They just arrived. I saw it. Oh no, that's the other window.
Yeah, I think the subscriptions were not done because otherwise it would have said already exists or something. But I unchanged.
Yeah, it would have said configured.
Okay. Sync, transform. Should come now.
So what do you think, Michael? Mike?
I love it when it's verbose like this, and it does anyone actually go back and actually read all that output?
What,
Oh,
the
here it
logs?
is.
There you go. Here you go.
There are the logs. My bad. So if we wanted to verify that these are actually the logs that we are sending, try to do that. So this is base 64 encoded. That's just base 64 encoded
Yeah.
for one of these.
So, you know, there are definitely different ways to do this, right? If you say, you know, I'm purely Kafka, I know that I'm Kafka, maybe you can take shortcuts. You know, if you want, you can write your own source and directly do the transformation and directly inject into an existing Kafka topic, and then everything is packaged as a container, right? So certainly you can, you know, you can do it differently, and you can do it yourself. But now, you know, that's one source. What happens when suddenly, you know, the next day you need SQS, and then the next day you need Cognito source, and you need DynamoDB, and you need CodeCommit, right? And this is just AWS. So then you need a GitLab event source, a GitHub event source, and then your targets. You know, not only do you need OpenShift serverless, but one day you're going to want to send everything to Elasticsearch, and then one day you're going to want to send everything to Splunk, right? And then, you know, to whatever you know. So that's where, you know, we see the strengths of TriggerMesh is that we have those catalog of sources and targets, and then you can describe those entire event flows in a declarative manner. And because you have those flows in a declarative, you know, manifest, suddenly you fall back on your DevOps tooling with your CI/CD and your GitOps, and that's the big strength. So that's it. Thank you.
So, like Sebastian said, there was hardly any real setup of servers and things like that done. If it was a real application, I would have just had to work on my JavaScript and get the job done.
Thanks, Samir.
Thanks, Samir, and we still have plenty of time there.
I'm sorry if I went a little fast. I was not aware that Seb was going to do a demo, so I had actually planned to do the whole setup.
Surprise!
And Samir, I didn't tell you that Mike just wanted a 10-minute demo.
That's fine. It's all good. Thanks for coming. I know we're 2 minutes over. Great session. Thank you. Yeah. Anyways, by the way, if anyone wants to get caught up with us from Red Hat, you can send me an email. Just wait@redhat.com. It's WAITE. As far as getting connected with our folks from TriggerMesh, we have our slide up here. Sebastian, I don't know if you want to speak to that. I didn't realize you guys were down and your headquarters was in Raleigh.
Yeah, my co-founder Mark is in Raleigh. Yeah. So no, yeah, send us, at TriggerMesh on Twitter. If you need more information on the product, definitely reach out to Gary at triggermesh.com. And then, visit triggermesh.com, the website. We're doing regular webinars. So, definitely feel free to reach out and ask us, more questions. We are in the OpenShift IBM Red Hat Marketplace, so you can find us, directly there.
When's your next webinar?
Uh,
I would have asked you like, hey, when's the next event you're going to be at? Are you going to be at in Amsterdam or Copenhagen? But I think we're going to have to wait another possibly up to a year for that. But tell us about your webinars that you do. Like,
Yeah, mid-January we're doing something with Google. So I'm not sure. But there's going to be some interesting webinar in January.
okay,
But then Twitter is a good source of information. We're pretty active there, and so you can get all the latest news, or LinkedIn as well, of course.
sure. Well, great. Sebastian and Samir, thanks for joining us here for this edition of the OpenShift Commons Briefing, our Operator Hours TV show. We have it every Wednesday at noon, and thanks again, and good luck. Good luck going forward. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Amir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. Bye-bye.
Bye.